My name is Craig Ferguson. This podcast is called Joy. It's not rocket science. I talk to people I like about their pursuit of happiness. Here's Tony Hawk, a legend, an icon, maybe the icon of the skateboard world. Enjoy.
So you had an accident about a year ago.
I broke my femur a year ago, and I was dead set on getting back to skating as soon as possible. And I got back to it too soon, and the impact forced my bone to never reconnect.
You guys like Evil Knievel shit going on.
I mean, in hindsight, it's regrettable, it's embarrassing, but I also was in denial of it. I thought that I was just going through a harder time. So about 8 months into my recovery, I realized that it wasn't getting any better. I wasn't improving in terms of what I could do physically. And I went and got x-rays and realized that the bone was actually further apart than it had been post-surgery, and went and got it realigned with a specialist and waited. And that was the key. Just waiting.
Do you have a different pain threshold to normal humans? Have you ever had it tested?
No, but it's definitely been noted by others and friends and things. And
well, it's funny. I watched Till the Wheels Come Off last night. And I was looking at the spills that you were taking, or what do you got? I don't know the right terminology because I'm not a skater. Is spill right? Or
spill,
slam?
Yeah, slams, sure.
All right, or falls, or maybe
all those.
hurties.
Yeah.
Like I see some of the hurties.
If you see bail, then that's more intentional,
right?
And what you were seeing there was definitely
no one was
unintentional. Yeah,
they were like, but even from the footage when you were a little kid, like everything just like slamming into this thing over and over and over again. Do you get immune to it? Is that
it's
what it is?
It's not immune. It's more that there's an acceptance that comes with it.
Right.
That I need to endure this for the sake of progression. And so that has always been my attitude. And so I didn't mind it so much.
Right.
Sometimes it's worse than others, but not that often. I mean, there's sort of this, I guess it's more like when you choose a life of skateboarding, there's sort of a level of pain that you know there's always going to be low lying.
Like all the time. But see, I envy you very much. Not about the money and drugs and fame and shit. I've had enough of that. But but you knew your thing and you have your thing. It's not like it was ever in any question, because you said right there you chose a life of skateboarding. Or you didn't say you chose it, but you used that expression. Do you think you chose it, or it chose you? Because like with your dad at that point as well, because your dad was heavily involved in the...
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that I chose the life of skateboarding early on, even when it was not there was no path to success, because no one had carved that path yet.
Right.
But I loved what it provided me, so I just loved skating. But I would say later on, there was a sense of skateboarding chose me, in that suddenly people were asking me to sort of be the spokesperson.
Yeah.
And I was willing to do it, but it wasn't what I aspired to.
What did you aspire to at the beginning?
Just keep learning new tricks.
Right.
That was it. It was pretty simple.
But it's a funny thing though, because I mean, like you're one of you're one of those people that's really difficult to have a conversation with that's recorded. Not because you're difficult, but because the people that are into your thing are so messianic about your thing that if I say the wrong word, instead of spill, I say, or slam, I say spill, or like people get fucking crazy about it. And it's kind of
I'd say less now than before,
right.
But I understand what you're saying, yes.
But it was funny watching, because I thought that the documentary about you and a lot of your contemporaries, Till the Wheels Come Off. That's what it's called, right?
Till the Wheels Fall Off.
Till the Wheels Fall Off, right? See, I said come off, fall off. Now people
I've seen that actually in print, so
right, okay.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
But I was watching it, and because I'm not in that world. I mean, I know of it, but I'm not inside it. And the athleticism and the grace and the style and the craziness of all of that, that what you do is obvious to anyone, even on a casual glance. But what I wasn't expecting to see is, first of all, the development of the world. I mean, like that's like being around at the start of golf or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, sure.
And then you, and I think Mullins as well, get a very strong sense of I don't really think it's about the board, and it hasn't been about the board for a long time. I feel like it's something else. It's like a search for grace. It's like the way guys climb mountains or something.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think that, especially with Rodney and I, we were so hyper-focused on new moves, new tricks, and we didn't know what the goal of that was. It just fed us. So we learn a new trick and then move on to the next one, move on to the next one. And we didn't really think about that we were creating any sort of movement.
Right.
We just had to do it. And then as we got older, that became, there's an argument that became more of a curse than a blessing because we keep chasing it to our detriment. Where even Rodney, I mean, you see him now, like, let's put it this way. Rodney walks through an airport and people come up with courtesy carts. So do you need a ride?
Really?
Yeah, that's the truth. Do you know what I mean? Like, because
people do that to me too, but I can't even ride a skateboard
because he walks with such pain.
Right.
But he will skate for 3 to 4 hours every single night on his own.
That's interesting. So he's more comfortable skating than walking then?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Are you that way too still?
I would say before I got hurt, yes. Now I definitely have a little more hesitation in my skating because I should. I'm still on the healing path, but
yeah. Also, you like everybody else, you get older.
You get older, sure.
It takes
but
longer.
I think what wasn't really talked about in that documentary, because it's nuanced and it's more my personal thing, is that my style has changed quite a bit in the last 10 years in that I'm more focused on low impact skating. And I know what you saw there was pretty crazy and I did some crazy stuff and whatever, but really my focus, especially with tricks, has been more technical. And so it's more like board maneuvering and stuff that just is on the top of the ramp as opposed to 10 feet above it.
Right. So it's funny because I can see the athleticism of it, but I don't understand how it's done. It's like if I watch someone play golf or swim even, you know what I mean? It's like I know how it's done. But I watch what you do and what Mullins does and what all these other guys do. I'm like, I don't even know where you start with that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but you've created, I mean, you personally as well with the foundation have moved into this idea of like expanding it. How many parks have you put together now?
Well, we've helped to fund over 700.
Wow.
Over the last 20 years. And that's my proudest work. And that stems from my experience at the skate park as a kid, because I got very lucky in that one of the last parks in the US happened to be in San Diego,
right,
pretty close to where I lived. And that was never lost on me that I had that place to go and I had that sense of community and I had that support group there. I mean, yes, it was my training ground, but it was also just this place of belonging.
It was like where the kids went, right?
It was. I mean, you found me there at all hours until they closed,
right, when
school was out. But when I had a sense of success and a way to sort of help, I don't know, the industry or the skaters, that was my first go-to. Was I want to provide more skate parks because all these kids feel disenfranchised. They love skating and they're told not to do it because it's on public property or private property,
and it's a nuisance in it, and it's
and
noisy
whatever else. But it's like, but they found something that speaks to them and that I think is a healthy outlet.
What do you think it would have happened to you if you hadn't found skating, or it hadn't found you?
I think I would have just been doing something really tech oriented because I was really fascinated with technology all through my teenage years and I mean still to this day, but I was an early adopter. Like I had one of the first nonlinear video editing systems, and
really
I did
because I thought, I guess the answer I was kind of expecting was that you would have been lost without it, but it doesn't seem like.
I probably wouldn't have felt as
rich.
For sure that I wouldn't have felt as validated or felt like there was something that I could do that really fed what I needed in terms of creativity wise.
Right.
And so maybe doing video projects or something would have touched on that a bit, but I don't think it would have provided the same.
It's an
sense of-
interesting form of creativity as well, doing, creating tricks on a board. I mean, it's like painting with something that nobody's painted with until
or
1970 or something. I mean,
or do you think anyone will appreciate it?
Well, I think people do appreciate
But I just saying,
it.
back then,
Oh,
especially
right.
with the creation, like with Rodney and I, when we were doing all these tricks,
Right.
it was kind of considered a circus act.
Well, it's got a bit of that in it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you guys was doing the tours with setting up in the arena with the ramps and the motorbikes, and
Right.
it's a little bit of a traveling circus, isn't it? It's a little bit of a
for
monster
sure,
truck.
yeah, absolutely. But what I'm saying is in our world, skating was a pretty small community.
Right.
We were the outcasts of that community because all we cared about was tricks. Everyone else cared about
right. Yeah, I
the
see what you're saying.
style and how much air they get. And so Rodney and I were these outcasts. Like we were outcast in an outcast activity.
Right.
And so we didn't think there was any sort of, there would be any accolades in that. We just loved doing it.
For a while, I worked with Mick Jagger on writing a screenplay that never happened. But because I was doing it, I was on tour with the Rolling Stones for a while, and I got to see up close how the Rolling Stones work. Excuse me. And I was watching Keith Richards, who you remind me of a little bit, because he would be quite happy if he was playing that guitar in a shitty blues band in a pub in London. Fine, doesn't matter. Or if he's playing the Enormo Dome in San Diego, doesn't fucking matter. It's playing the guitar that counts.
Yeah.
And is that the same for you on the board?
Yeah.
So even when you were doing when things were nutty, when you have your own plane and the crowds are crazy and the money's nuts and stuff like that, was it all still focused on the board? Is that what kept you out of the druggy drinky world?
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, I definitely had my own vices and distractions through the crazy years, but always the priority was skating. And I think that even in my youth, when in the 80s, when we thought we were having unparalleled success and we were doing we were doing some TV stuff and movie stuff, I was always really focused on the skating because I saw my peers, some of them get distracted and get caught up in the hype and get hooked on drugs.
Right.
And then they lost their abilities. And it was like, that was my very first example. Like, don't go down that route.
That's what I thought. I mean, it's not something you can do when you're high, is get on a board or is it? I don't know. Can you?
Maybe for a certain amount of time.
Right.
But
did you ever do you ever give demonstrations? Do you ever get on the board and do crazy shit when you were messed up?
No. I think it's funny. I remember the skate park I grew up at, people would smoke weed in the parking lot. Not everyone, but some.
Oh, come on.
And
everybody. It's California. The whole state smells of weed now.
Well, I was pretty young too.
Yeah.
So I remember one day I was like, all right, I'm going to go join the crew. And then I came back to skate and I just couldn't get it together. I couldn't, my timing was off. I kept almost we call hanging up, which means like locking up on the coping where your board sticks.
Right.
And I just thought, okay, I can't do that. That doesn't work for me. And drinking is just out of the question.
Right.
When you're skating. So I think
I think I'm beginning to figure out why I never get into skateboarding. But it's kind of interesting though, because that is a real kind of positive thing. If you're talking about all these skate parks for kids, if you can't do it properly when you're twisted on booze and alcohol or and drugs,
right,
that you're kind of helping people stay away from it a little bit
I
too,
hope
right?
so. I mean, I for sure there is the contingent that they equate partying with,
of course,
skateboarding,
yeah.
and they do it. And honestly, it's probably more of a short-lived thing, but that's their life. I'm not trying to have some just say no campaign with the skate parks.
I know what you mean.
It's more that we want to provide them the outlet. Yeah.
It's because when you started, it was just dried out swimming pools, right? That was at the beginning.
Yeah, I got in at the tail end of that.
Right.
So the Dogtown and Z-Boys, I knew of that crew as I started, but they were already, as far as I was concerned, much older.
What is the evolution of it? If you can take me through it a little bit. So the Dogtown is that the very beginning?
The beginning has there's
Lost
controversy
in
over
the
how it
midst of
began,
time,
but
yeah.
basically the first skateboard, it is said, was a roller skate that was dismantled. The trucks and wheels were nailed onto a 2x4.
Right.
And that was a skateboard. And then a lot of the Southern California people took that as, oh, that's surfing on a sidewalk.
Right.
So then they started developing actually shaped boards out of fiberglass and wood, like surfboards were made.
Right.
And then they were trying to emulate surfing. Once the big drought hit in the 70s in Southern California, all these swimming pools were dry, and the surfers saw that, oh, that looks like a wave. And that's how we got to.
Do you surf? Do you?
I do, yeah, but that not as actively.
Right.
And the reason I got into skateboarding is because my older brother was a hardcore surfer, and so he got into skateboarding by default, because that was, if you lived in Southern California, you surfed in the 70s, you started skating, and that's how I got my first skateboard. Was his hand me down.
Oh wow. He must be very happy for you.
He's
you're a lot
he's
younger
very
than
happy that he can school me in surfing still. That's what he's happy about.
Well, it's funny that you're a lot younger than your nearest sibling, right?
Yeah, he's 13 years older than me.
Right. My son, my youngest son, is 9.5 years younger than his older brother.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was watching the energy of you as a young kid, it reminded me very much like my own son is very like that, like a kind of 60-pound psychopath, really.
Right.
I mean, just like, and I
had
think,
one of those too.
Yeah, they're kind of amazing. I think it's something to do with being light as well. See, I was a husky little kid.
Yeah.
So if I fell, it really hurt.
Right.
If you're 60 pounds and you fall, I think it hurts less.
Maybe, but I think the light and fearless is a scary combination.
Yeah,
and that's
is.
definitely, I had one of the, we have several children between my wife and I, but there was one that was, we called him a pixie.
Yeah.
But he would try anything.
Yeah.
But almost to the point where he had no sense of mortality.
Yeah, well, kids are kind of like that a little bit.
Yeah, but he was on a different
like
spectrum
off the charts
of that,
a little bit. Do you think that you were more cautious, like as a parent, because you had gone through all of those injuries and that the creation of that world, as that world is forming?
I would say that I probably leaned more towards the other side of it in my early years of parenting, because I was young. I was 24 when my son was born.
That's young,
and
yeah.
I was just joining him, doing stuff, and getting him into skateboarding, and he's going down big ramps, and I'm pushing him into waves, and it was just more like, oh, I have this friend to do the stuff with, and it wasn't. I was trying to keep him safe as well, but I did think that he had a pretty good sense of his limitations.
Right.
And I was thankful for that. It wasn't until I had other kids that I realized, oh, they don't all have that self-preservation gene.
Yeah. It's funny that the when you become a parent, and just as you get older as well, because I was different with my older boy than I was with the younger one, but they are different too.
They are, yes. There's a lot of nurture and nature.
Yeah. What do you think? Like, because your dad was very supportive to you. At least I took that from the documentary that you and your dad were close, and he was very supportive. But the world was forming. The competitive, is it competitive? I guess it's competitive. Yeah, competitive skateboarding. But when I looked at the thing, when you first got to do the 900, right, or when you finally cracked the 900, how many times did you do that day, that X Games, to get to that 900?
Oh, I think that day was 11 or 12 or something. But it's funny that people focused in on that, because there were plenty of other days where I tried it dozens of times.
Right. But did you get it those
Didn't
days?
get it.
Well, that's why. That's why they focus. Because the day you get it that's the day.
Right, right. But you know what I mean? Like, that was a relatively short duration of attempts for as far as I was concerned.
Right.
So when people say, you tried 11 times, like, yeah, that was nothing. I tried it hundreds of times before that, like thousands of times.
But when you something like the 900, which I'm not quite sure why it's. In fact, I don't know why it's called the 900. Why is it called the 900?
That's degrees of spin.
Right. So it goes around 2.5, right? So 2.5 times in the air and then land.
Mm-hmm.
And you envisage that in your head first, and you go through it in your head, and you create it. You're like a painter does, or a movie director does, or
eventually I did that. Yes. When I first started trying it, it was almost 10 years prior to that event, and I really didn't know how to spin around that far, how to balance my body so that I could be in the position to get back down on the ramp. So I didn't quite have the vision then. It wasn't until a few years later when I actively started trying it and started figuring out that I could possibly get close. That's when I started visualizing it. And that's when the chase got accelerated, because I was just all in on this trick.
Right. So you understood that it was possible for you.
Yes.
And the idea of, as you're falling, as a human being is falling through space, and you're still having to twist, and you have an appointment to make with the board that you're gonna have to meet that appointment, or it's gonna hurt, or you're gonna be embarrassed, or you're just not gonna make the trick. Does the time slow down? Can you slow it down and think your way through it, or is it not possible to consciously go through the trick? Does it have to be, like automatic? Does it have to be there?
That's a really good question. I don't say that time slows down. It's more that there's a bunch of elements that have to come together, and you know it as soon as you take off that this one has all those pieces.
All right. So as you take off,
you
but think I'm going to make it.
But I would say more often than not,
right?
You don't have all those pieces.
Right.
So you take off immediately knowing this one's not going to work. But you have to go through the motion of it, because to take off in that position with that much speed and not spin all the way through is the most dangerous thing you can do.
So you just have to commit.
You have to commit to. So what I'm saying is, a few times I've done it where, and it didn't happen that day at X Games, but it's happened to be before and after that. If I don't get a hold of my board, I have to commit my body to that full spin, because of the position I put it in upon the takeoff. And I learned that the hard way, because a couple times my board got away from me and I just stopped. And all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, I'm in space. I have no idea where the ramp is and where is it. And then I hit it on my back. Yeah. And then that's the worst case scenario. So I learned that even if it's not going to work, just go through the motion of it.
And does it feel like there's anything you can do? Like if you go off and you go, not everything is here, but if I just do something.
Well, you definitely, yeah. I mean, there's plenty of that in our cavalier attitude towards tricks, but also in that moment, if you're in competition, you're going to try to make it no matter what.
Right.
So that's another, we call them, Hail Marys. It's like you're going to just throw it down
that because
this is the time it has to happen.
Right.
And if you're going to crash, it should be now. Do you know what I mean? If you're ever going to get destroyed on this trick because you committed to it, it should be in this format.
Right. So at least stay within the bounds of the trick.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I get it. What if you had been involved in the sport now, like if you were like Tony Hawk is 12 years old today and you're getting involved in it, does the sport now say to you, you have to wear this, you have to wear this protective outfit, it's still the same as it was?
No, it's so when I was growing up, the only way you could have any sense of success in skateboarding was to compete.
Right.
That's it. There was no YouTube, there's no social media. People weren't, the magazines were not going to cover you unless you went to this big event and probably did well.
Right.
Even if you were doing new tricks and not placing, they don't care about that.
Right.
Now skating is of age. It's way more diverse. You can enter skateboarding and never have to compete and still be one of the most successful skaters that's ever been. Because
you can do videos and
sure, you could have your YouTube channel. You could have your you could have your big social. You could be an influencer and a skater, and it's just a totally different. It is because of how much it permeated mainstream culture, in that skateboarding is just more of an accepted form of art or sport or activity, whatever you want to call it.
What is it to you?
To me, it's a lifestyle. It's a sport. It's an art form. But to me, it's my salvation.
That's what I was going to say. It's almost like I got a sense of that from you. In fact, all of the.
But what you were saying is like, would you have to conform to some sort of team sport or uniform or something like that.
Well, or safety
sure,
equipment.
If your goal is to be in the Olympics,
Right.
yes, that's your path and that's what you're going to have to adhere to. But you can just do it in your own voice, in your own style, and still make a go of it.
Right. What about the idea if it was an Olympic sport when you were a kid? Do you think you would have gone that way? Do you think you would have?
Sure, because that was the only.
But doesn't that say? I mean, I don't know how it's graded in the Olympics. Can you bring a new trick to an Olympic display?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's kind of like gymnastics. You go, here's something nobody's ever done before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And people go, okay, wow, and you get your 10s out of 10s.
Yeah, and also. The judges are all well versed in skateboarding, obviously,
Right.
and for them to see something new is going to they're probably going to overscore you for it,
Right.
because they just didn't expect it.
Right. And does it form like a routine? Like if you're doing it, I don't know how the sport's graded in the Olympics. So
The format of the Olympics is not any different really than what you probably saw in the documentary or
Right.
in other skate events. You have a time to run, and you are judged on your difficulty factor, the speed you kept, how you
Right.
use the course, and your consistency. So the basic elements of it are all the same.
It's funny though that talking about it as a sport. I mean, there are guys who were interviewed during the documentary. When I watched it, I thought, this guy's with the neck tattoos is never going to go to the Olympics. He's not even interested in watching the Olympics.
Sure.
Never
And
mind.
that was in my day, skating was so counterculture that it was akin to punk rock music. It was like,
Right.
we're not going to fit in. We're doing it our own way.
Well,
Fuck
that's
you
what
guys.
I always associated with it. That it
Right,
was a
and-
kind of like a punk thing.
Sure. And in that respect, there's extreme versions of that where it's like, we don't want to do anything that is considered mainstream
Right.
or whatnot. But then if you, like, I was so young, I didn't really understand all of that narrative maybe.
Right.
And I just loved what skateboarding was, even though it was different and it made me an outcast at school and it, it was just not the coolest thing to do. I just loved doing it. But also I love the idea that I got to compete with all these people that liked the same thing.
Right. And it does seem quite supportive in an odd way that people are, they're competitive, but not competitive in a way that you want to bring the other guy down. It's just like, I can't believe you did that.
I also think that shines through in the Olympic coverage.
Right.
I saw, I mean, if you're talking about, like, I got to go to Tokyo, and a good example was the women's park event. There was one girl that was absolutely the favorite to win.
Right.
Without question, if she would have made her whole routine, she's going to win this thing. And she just kept missing this one trick. And she finally almost got it at the end, but still missed it. She ended up getting third. And when the competition was over and they gave out the awards, all of the other girls lifted her up on their shoulders and carried her out of the venue.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. What other sport could you think of in the Olympics where they're all celebrating the third place person because they thought she was going to be the best?
And that she tried. Do you get an amount of attempts in the? I guess just with the
no, not with that. That's that one. I believe it's a 40-second routine.
Right.
That 40 seconds. That's it. If you fall in the middle of it, you're out.
So the idea of doing 11 attempts at a 900 is not going to exist, and you're never going to see that in the Olympics.
No.
Right.
No, not at all.
But you are going to see it at the X Games still, right?
Yes.
Right.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so.
I hope that format continues.
Are you gonna keep skating until the wheels come off of you?
That wasn't my quote, by the way. That was
no,
Rodney
it was
Mullen,
Mullins.
but,
I remember.
Yeah, in a sense, I think that I've definitely gotten a better perspective on my limitations through this last injury I had.
Yeah,
and that I don't expect to come back fully 100% and get back to the exact same type of skating I was doing before this happened. But I can find some happy medium there. And I can find something that where I'm still considered a professional. I could still probably put out content or whatever it is of some sort of progress in skating. But I'm not moving the needle necessarily. It's just
Right.
more that it's more personal goals.
Is there more like can you envisage a time like like they do the senior PGA tour? And all
Sure,
that?
and that already exists.
Right. So you get like a yellow
Yeah,
jacket or
it's
maybe
funny
a
that-
collar and tie, and just
It's funny because they're having a few events in recent years. In fact, there was one in particular called Bowlerama in Bondi in Australia.
right.
And they had this big bowl event every year. They had the pro division, then they had the masters division, which is basically older pros.
Right.
And then they had the legends division, which is
Okay.
super old pros like me.
But legend is better than senior, isn't it?
Well, legends, yeah, I feel like I'd rather be considered a legend than a master.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, and also the masters division, like those guys are still pretty much pro skaters. So I wouldn't have wanted to be in that division anyway.
It's like there's guys who are younger and faster than you, and
Yeah,
here they
it's
come.
more like, I would say it would be more like the pros are sort of 30 and under.
Right.
The masters were like 30 to 45-ish.
Right.
And then all of us old guys.
Oh, the
were in
legends.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the idea. Is there any generational kind of get off my lawn part of it? Like, do you look at kids who are coming up now and the boards are better and the helmets are better and the
No, I
things
mean,
are better?
I would say there's a sense of jealousy that they have the resources to, let's say, try their first 900 into a foam pit.
Yeah.
I would have loved that
Yeah.
option. I didn't have that.
But would you have got to be a legend if you landed foam? You're never a legend.
Yeah, but I would have maybe kept my front teeth.
Yeah. Did you think you've spent a lot of money on dental bills over the years?
yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Let's see, I knocked my front teeth out when I was 11 or 10 or 11. That was my first big injury. And then knocked them out about 5 times since.
Is there no kind of mouth guard you can wear or something like that?
You could. I mean, I think I've passed that time in my life. But,
Yeah.
but also the cool thing, and I say this a lot, but the cool thing about getting new teeth is that you get to pick the size and the color.
So where are you losing the swings?
That's
you
the silver
gain in the
lining, yeah.
roundabouts? Yeah. So where do you think it goes now then? The sport is it a sport? I don't even know if I buy that it's a sport.
Well,
I think it's more than just a
by
sport.
the definition, sure.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the competitive side of it, but also
Right.
there's just this whole counterculture art form to skateboarding that has no interest in competing. So I feel like it's a big umbrella.
It is. I suppose it is. The closest thing, I mean, it's nothing like this physically, but it is kind of like golf in the sense that some people play it and it's really important to them to win, and some people play it and they play against themselves.
And they play, or just to be social.
Right. Or that's who they hang out with.
Yeah. I mean,
exactly,
there is a whole population of skaters that are like my age that they love to go skate curbs. Sunday morning, 8 a.m. That's their crew. They go and skate the grocery store curbs because they're painted red and they can grind and it's low impact and they're still skating.
Do you ever go and do that?
Yeah, but my style is so steeped in what we call transition
Yeah.
that I'm pretty clunky on curbs. Like it's probably more dangerous for me to skate a curb, honestly, than a 14-foot ramp.
And do you still have a ramp at home?
I have the ramp that you saw in documentary. I was riding that yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
So you are back on.
That's
it,
my
then.
happy place. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So like if you have a row with your wife or something, you're like, God, you go out there and you.
I would say it's definitely my way to center myself. Yes.
What happens if you can't get on the ramp? If you can't get on the board?
I'll let you know when I get there.
It's never going to happen.
I'm sure it'll happen. Maybe I'll just get a smaller ramp.
Get a smaller ramp, or maybe just start wearing more foam. Like get a foam suit.
That might be a good look.
Do you think it's been like the journey that skateboarding has made? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's good for it? Do you think it's healthier now than it was then?
It's much healthier now than it was then.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
I mean, there's definitely the naysayers that say like, oh, all this corporate
Because there is a lot of corporate involvement.
all this corporate
now.
involvement and we don't belong in the Olympics and sell out and blah, blah, but I still think the core of skateboarding is what it always has been. And that is a self-expression and something that is very creative, very innovative, but also so diverse that you can't define it as just one thing.
Yeah, it beats me. I don't know how to define it, but I'm shocked by not shocked, I'm impressed and delighted at how different the mindset is from one boarder to the next. It is a very individual thing.
And I think that it's even more diverse and inclusive now than it used to be. I mean, the mindset to be a skater in the days that I started, you had to be very committed to it and almost like obsessed with it to the point where you didn't do anything else or know anything else because it just wasn't accepted. And so you had to be stubborn and very resilient to all the criticism you get from the outside people.
The stubborn thing is quite interesting. The obsession that you kind of need. I have a friend who became a very, very, very successful guitarist. And he started when he was very young, obviously. And he said, you have to be obsessed enough. The expression he used was to achieve escape velocity. That you have to be so obsessive. You have to like go to it 4 hours a day when you're like 12 years old in order to get that, to make it become something else. So you're not like a guy playing a guitar at a party.
I think it's the 10,000 hours idea.
Is that what they say, 10,000 hours on the board? Is that right?
I mean, that's what they say about anything that you become an expert at. You need to put in your 10,000 hours. But I think that I never thought of it that way. It was just, I was obsessed with it. It was as soon as the school bell rang, I had to figure out how to get to the skate park, and I would be there until either it closed or my mom got off work. She worked at a community college as a night teacher, so I had that going for me. That it wasn't.
Do you still feel that way? Is there still a moment in the day where, like, if you talking to me now and you think, I'm fucking tired of this guy, I just really like to go get on the board?
No, but it's definitely. Let's just put it this way: it's much more scheduled,
right?
For me now, where I know that I have this window of the day and I better get there or it's going to pass me by.
Right. So you get there and then you get to the early bird special at the Legends of Skateboarding restaurant.
Yeah. You're onto something there.
All right. Tony, it's a joy to talk to you, man.
I appreciate
wonderful.
the invite.
Thanks very much.